over to the Spirit of God. And yielding starts by being honest before God. Sometimes you can't yield because you've never told him that you don't want to yield. God knows you don't want to yield. So why don't you tell him you don't want to yield over to him? But at the same time, you know that he's right. That is being honest instead of wearing that mask that we do. Tell him you find it difficult. Tell him you don't want to yield in your flesh. Tell him you can't love that person in the natural. He knows, and he's there ready to listen. He is your Father, and he loves you, and you cannot hide from him. And he knows these things that we can still harbour and hold in the heart. Then tell him, and you watch how he'll move heaven and earth if need be to work in you his will, because his will is always the best. It is never wrong. That's why God loves obedience. He says it's better than sacrifice. It's better than anything else. But you know, he asks obedience of us because he knows we can't do it. It's impossible for us. Why couldn't he ask of something else? But he asked for that obedience. And do you know why? Because it's God in you working it for his glory. He knows you can't obey. He knows you can't follow him. He knows you can't meet any of this. It is by his mercy and grace. It's as we bow our knee in a hopeless state. It's as we bow our knee in absolute honesty, he then raises us up in his strength and power. And he gets the devil off your back because you can't get him off your back. Why am I talking in this way? Because I'm talking about the sword. I'm talking about what divides. And God is dividing those things in our life, where we've still got wrong affections, where there's still idolatry, where we're still looking to man and not God, where we're still trusting in the arm of the flesh and not God and his promises. That's why I'm talking like I am. Because the only way you will trust God, the only way you will walk by faith is to be honest in his presence and tell him. I will tell you something as your pastor. Years back, God brought me to a place where I had to be completely honest with him and tell him I didn't love him as I should. And I was harbouring that for a long time, but he knew. He knew. And guess what? He didn't reject me. He didn't whip me. It was like he said, at last, you have been honest before me. And it was like he gave me an ultimatum. He said, what do you want? Do you want to love me with all your heart, soul, mind and being? Is that what you want? I said, yes, Lord, it is what I want, but I don't do it. Okay, faith, trust me. And you watch. And you know what? God did work that, and he is working that because he is faithful. Because I don't fight against division. I don't fight against this sword that comes down to divide. There are too many in the house of God who fight against this sword. And those who yield over to the sword of the Spirit will bear the marks of God's sword.